If I have now the option of saying, do I want to run a business where I attract people, or do I want to run a business where I go out and hunt for it daily? You better believe I'm going to attract it, because I can hit millions, where over here I can only hit however many I can dial or reach out to.
Welcome to the Coffee and Questions podcast. I am your host, Michelle Berman-Michael, and my mission with this podcast is simple: to help realtors and loan officers across the world tap into the value Instagram can have for them and their business. To me, organic business that comes to us is the name of the game. On this show, you're going to hear from myself, other experts across social media, and also others that are just like you, selling real estate and doing loans and doing it at a high level on social media. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. Now, many of you guys who know me know that I have been part of the real estate and mortgage community for several years, but I actually have the pleasure of interviewing someone who has given me lots of opportunity within his Lab Coat Agents organization. I'm super excited to not only have him on as a guest of our podcast, but also as a friend and someone who just knows what he's talking about, truly believes in the message that we've been putting out and pumping out for years. But none other than Tristan Ahumada. He is a jack of all trades. He is a dad, a husband, a real estate agent, the CEO of Lab Coat Agents, and the CMO of Success Enterprises. Some new things happening in his world. But Tristan, I am so excited to have you. And for those people who still live under a rock, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of how you came into the real estate community?
Tristan Ahumada. I've been in real estate since 2004, right out of college. Went to law school and real estate, and then didn't finish law school, but did continue on real estate. It just made more money. And so from that, transitioned into online leads as my specialty, then went around speaking around the nation for Realtor.com. Then from there, I built Lab Coat Agents, brought in some friends who you may know. One of them is Michelle. Obviously, we've showcased her as well. And then made partnerships and friends with Facebook, Instagram. I was on their advisory board for real estate for 4 years. We created the advisory board for Facebook and Instagram.
Amazing.
And then from there, my friend became a billionaire, bought Success Magazine, and then said, hey, can you come over here and help us out? It's a 120-year-old company at the time. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it, sure. And then I got to do that thing, and now I'm doing real estate, running Lab Coats, CMO of Success Enterprises, and a whole bunch of other stuff in between. But that's a little
all
bit
the titles. I think that jack of all trades is never been more true. Truly
terrible, but
it's funny because you and I always say, you don't need to be a master of all the things, just master one. But then here we are mastering all the things. So,
well, on that, I think you and I master something and it just happens to touch everything else.
I agree. And I think that's a perfect segue into the word of the year for my organization and for everybody that has been around me has been psychology, understanding what that actually means. So my first question to you is just, when you think of the word psychology and you think of Instagram, where does that take your brain? And what would you say to someone who's like, what? Why? What does psychology have to do with that?
Oh, I agree with you. I love that word. And if we think of the definition of psychology, it's somewhere along the lines of, and I'm going to get this wrong because I didn't look, probably the study of the human mind and the functions. So if we apply that to social media, we can think, well, if we're studying the human mind and its functions, how does that relate to the audience that we're trying to connect to? And I think that at that point, where we're seeing the transition happen is two things. One, it's more of the authenticity part, more of people really wanting to get to know you, which falls along the niche of what you do. Because the thing that makes social media different is you make it different, right? Nobody can replace you, and you need to show up more often as you on social. And that, I think that's where we bridge the gap with the word psychology in our audience and Instagram, right? A lot more of you will allow people to connect with you.
Yeah. And I just looked it up because I was like, I feel like he just nailed that definition without even knowing that he just nailed it. But the true definition, according to dictionary.com, of the word psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions especially those affecting behavior, keyword,
Ooh,
in a given
behavior.
context.
I love
So you, my friend, absolutely nailed that.
that's so good on the behavior part. Michelle, I
Yeah.
didn't think about this. Behaviors. So here's what happens, and it's clear on the social side. Your beliefs dictate your behaviors. It happens all the time. And what we see on the social side, especially you, because you're a coach on this, when you're helping people, they have certain beliefs about how Instagram works or beliefs about how they should show up on Instagram. And that affects our behaviors, mostly negatively, right? Because we're like, oh, I'm too fat. Oh, I'm losing hair. Oh, I'm just, my face. I need whatever it is. It's always an excuse. And that affects our behaviors. And some people are like, oh, social media, it's just not for me. Instagram, I just can't do that. But that's all falling under your beliefs. If you want to change anything, you really need to change your beliefs on Instagram and the necessity that it has now as an extension of prospecting. Like it's no longer an option. This is a must. Like you have to show up on social. I would rather live in a world of attraction. And I've door knocked. I started door knocking, right, in real estate, and I love it. But if I have now the option of saying, do I want to run a business where I attract people, or do I want to run a business where I go out and hunt for it daily? You better believe I'm going to attract it, because I can hit millions, where over here I can only hit however many I can dial or reach out to, or knock one at a time. Right.
Really, the thing for me with Instagram, and you just said it without probably, again, even realizing how brilliant what you just said is, but it's prospecting at scale. And this is something that we've been saying for years and years and years is if you are effectively using Instagram, you truly are prospecting at scale. And it's not just Instagram, it can be social in general. But again, for sake of context, I'm the Instagram girl, so that's where I'm going to land. But the reality is, and I posted this in my stories yesterday, I actually did a poll. Would you rather have 100 cold leads that you are either paying for or going out and fishing for? Or would you rather have 5 that are people who come to you and are reaching out to you, and by the time they schedule a call with you or send you the DM or send you the Facebook message, they're already sold? Right? Which would you rather have? Now, a lot of people would say 100 without thinking, right? They'll quickly say 100 because, oh, the volume is more important, right? Well, if I have 100, I know I convert it around 10 to 12%. So I'll take the 100. But guess what? For me, and I know that you're aligned with me on this, I'll take the 5 all day, every day, because those 5 people, if they're that bought into me already before they pick up the phone, then they probably have 5 other people that they're probably then going to continue to refer to me after that. So 5 isn't just 5, it's really 5 times 5, which is 25, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on this, because I think that the other part to this, and this because I've seen it, the 5 that are already attracted to you through social, they're also interacting on social with others, and they understand social media. So it really isn't just 5, it's 5 times the amount of people they also reach on their socials, because when they're sold on you, they're going to tell other people. And this is how we grew Lab Coat Agents, right? People are like, how did you grow it? I'm like, well, I provided value, and it was very niche, only on online lead generation. That was it. That's all I was great at. And then that spread to other people. Then other people are like, damn, that's really good. By the way, I'm really good at farming. Can I show up on Lab Coats? I'm like, yeah. And then they brought in their people. This other person's like, I'm great at expireds. I'm like, great, bring in other people. And then that's how it grew. You're talking about the exact same thing. This is it. I would totally take the 5.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I want to ask you a question about Success Enterprises, because you recently took on a role as CMO, which that's a massive role. I remember seeing your post when it went live on Facebook, and just thinking, like, excuse my French, but literally, holy shit, that is insane. But with that, why did you take the role? What did the role mean to you? And as the chief marketing officer, what does that look like for you as far as taking over social and really helping change that side of their brand?
So there were a few things on that. Number one was I looked at it as an opportunity to jump into something that I've never done before. So I'm a real estate agent. I never really had a job before. Like I had a little bit telemarketing while in high school and college and little jobs, right? But I never really worked anywhere. And so I was like, there's an opportunity to work in corporate as an executive. I'm like, I don't even know that world. And I love challenges because I was scared to, I was kind of freaking out. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, that makes me happy. I'm going to go that direction. Number two is there's an opportunity to help out a 126-year-old company that their socials aren't looking as hot as they used to be. And so if I can turn this around with the help of my friends and the help of people that are already there, the media team, I can really learn something along the way because I've never done it at this scale on something that's already been established. I've done it with companies that have nothing and I've grown that from scratch, right? So not just lab coats, but other companies. But something to this magnitude that touches people outside of real estate, I'm like, damn, this could be really fun. So it was more along the challenges of challenging me into growing into the position and seeing if I could take it on.
I'm not a corporate employee, that's for darn sure. I just like you, I've been down that road a few times, and it comes down to why I love what we do so much, which is the freedom to create and the opportunity to have a voice that is ours and to be ourselves, whatever that might look like. And the thing you said though is fear-based, right? So you took the opportunity because it presented an opportunity to say, I've never done this before. But what I heard you say in addition to that is building something from scratch when there hasn't been any issues or mistakes made is fun. It's easy, right? As long as you have a blueprint or a roadmap, which you clearly already had prior to starting it. But the real challenge and the real beauty for what I think you did is you stepped into an organization who already had a massive presence in general, right? A 126-year-old company. Most people know of them. Most people have gotten the magazine delivered to them at some point in their life. But to take something that already has that and say, I have to go in and I have to undo all of this so that we can then replant and resow the seed and kind of rebuild it. That is wildly challenging. And I think that is, in my opinion, that is what we're doing, you and I, in the mortgage and the real estate space for professionals on social, because 95% of them, when they reach out to us, they're doing it so wrong that we have to go in and we have to undo a crap ton of bad habits.
You know, that's so true. Here's why they're doing it wrong. And then you tell me what you think, or you can add to this too. I feel like the general population that tries Instagram, all right, they go in and they're like, I like what this, let's say I like what Michelle is doing. I'm going to try it. And then they try it. They don't change it. They keep on trying it. And they're like, oh, it sucks. It's no good. I tried it. It's no good anymore. Instead of trying it, failing, and they're like, oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Trying that. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else. The consistency of failure is what gives you the success, but people fall out in between so quick, right? And I think that's where you come in and you're like, no. This is what you try here. Great. That doesn't work anymore. This is what you try over here. Oh, you know what? That stopped working. It doesn't work the same. That's why I love social. It changes so fast. Yeah. And Michelle, you and I are invaluable because of it, because we're continually failing ahead of everyone else.
And we're never out of a job. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's true. That's very true.
It's so true. We will always be needed. And I think as long as we continue to show up the way we show up, that's where the value is. But failure is inevitable in any business. You've now probably launched and fixed or helped hundreds and hundreds of businesses over the years. But I still love failing. When I launched the Instagram Power Method back in 2019, it failed royally. And I remember thinking the night before I was turning it on, I said to my husband at the time, mind you, I had fired all my clients. I was literally making $0 a month so that I could spend 6 months building this bad boy, right? And I remember telling my husband the night before, I was like, babe, we are going to be so rich. Like, I'm turning this on tomorrow and this shit is just going to explode. And I believe that, like, in my heart, right? And when I woke up the next morning, you turn the faucet on and you're like, okay, there's no water coming out, still no water coming out. And almost 3 weeks later, we had only sold 2 horses. And at the time, the course was only $697. That was nothing. That was no money. That didn't even cover my Kajabi expenses over the last 6 months. And so
That's true.
So I took a second and I stopped and I took 2 weeks off and I said, I'm going to live in this 2 weeks and I'm going to figure out like, what did I do wrong? And I'm then going to relaunch and I'm going to use the episode that I was just on with Phil as a marketing tool for relaunching. We relaunched and we just passed $1 million in Instagram Power Method sales, not even 3 years in. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Obviously you failed. Has there ever been something like that that's happened to you where you've taken that step back and had that moment of stillness and said, you know what, this is why it failed?
I've done that continually.
That's our whole life.
It's funny that you bring that up like that. Yes. And I feel like every time I look back at the failure, it's number one, it's me, right? It's my approach. And number two, it's something that if I change, I can grow from it. But the thing is, you continue to move forward by changing things. Most people just stop. And this is why they never progress into anything. Right? They just stop and say that didn't work. And then they don't pivot. They don't morph what they thought they needed to change to be that next version of that company or themselves.
Yeah, I think everybody's so quick to blame the system or the course I bought or the external factor, right? And I think we're living in that right now. If I can, I want to shift us a little bit because the word psychology being like the focus, but the definition having that word behavior in it. What you're describing is 100% behavior based. My failure experience is 100% behavior based. Like in life, right? We've all failed and we've had to have these moments of self-reflection. But I think the people who are actually successful are the ones that take the most leadership and take ownership of their issue. Extreme Ownership is the name of the book that everybody reads. It's about the SEAL situation. And another big one that I'm reading right now for the second time is Grit by Angela Duckworth. And she talks about this exact thing that you and I are talking about and that you and I both embody, which is one word, which is grit, right? Because when we fail, it's not your fault. It's not COVID's fault. It's not the interest rate's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's my fault, right? Because I missed something. When I launched the Instagram Power Method, I didn't have any form of pre-marketing in place. So I launched it with a hope and a whim that my Instagram presence was enough with no email marketing, no advertising whatsoever, which I don't necessarily believe in paid advertising. I think that it works for some people, it doesn't for others, right? We actually just turned all of our Facebook ads off because I was generating more the other way. But I think the reality is behavior is at the root of all of this, which is making behavioral change or taking ownership of our own behavior and saying, if Instagram's not working for me, it's not Instagram's fault. It's not Michelle or Tristan's fault because their accounts are so much bigger. That's why I'm not growing, or that's why I'm not converting. Oh, Tristan has 100,000 followers. He's just cooler than me. So that's why he's more successful. No, that's not the case. What is your take on grit and behavior and the aspect that goes into production when it comes to social media with those two words kind of in mind?
I think grit is habitual too, because, and going back to Extreme Ownership by Jocko, when you look at finally taking ownership of why things aren't working, you realize that it's a progression in your life. And if you at some point interrupt the patterns that have taken you to this life that you don't want, or be specific to how your Instagram looks right now, right? It's time to look inward and be like, what are my beliefs that allowed me to behave this way, that then created habits because I continually show up in the same way? One continual question I ask myself is like, what am I missing? Anytime I get pushback from anyone, anytime I fail anywhere, anytime I'm having difficulty, I'm like, what am I missing? It goes back to me, right? And so this way, it allows me to look at things more objectively. And if you start looking at it in the same way, you're like, okay, got it. There are people in this current atmosphere that are closing transactions, whether they're buying or selling. There are people right now that are getting business from Instagram.
Yep.
There are people that are growing their Instagram and engaging at another level completely outside of what you could even imagine. What are they doing that I'm not doing? And so if you start looking at it that way, it opens up your world to be like, you know what? Michelle's doing great on Instagram. I'm going to reach out to her. And if it means me having to buy her program, Instagram Power Method, for me to have a seat at the table and talk to her, then I'm going to do that. Because now you change the beliefs of what's possible. And if it means that I'm able to talk to you by having to pay to be closer to you, then I'm going to do it. And I don't think people look at it this way. People always look at it with, well, we've also been burned a lot, but people look at it and be like, you know what? Why is Michelle so successful? It's like, why not me? She doesn't deserve it. Same thing with on the listing and buying side for real estate. It's like, they got the listing? Oh man, that person? They don't even do anything. Instead, look and say, hey, I wonder why they're successful there. Maybe I should pick up the damn phone and call them or text them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go follow my guests on social media. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us a review wherever you consume this content.